record record on this computer, I guess, tonight.
Okay. Hi, everybody. Welcome to the April Dover Trails and Recreation Committee meeting. I would like to start by apologizing that we've not seen each other for a bit. We did meet in February and did not receive a quorum for that meeting, so had to call that one. And then the last meeting, myself as well as a number of other committee members had no power or internet because it happened to fall on the storm of the century. So thank everybody for your patience and welcome back to Trails and Recreation. I'd like to start by looking for any public comments. Does anyone have any public comments? Okay. All right, seeing none. Any additions or changes to the agenda? Again, seeing none. Just some brief updates for you guys tonight. So we'll approve the minutes and then we'll get into them and get everybody on with their night. Okay. I'm sure things will be ramping up here again as we get back into the snow melting and whatnot. So can I have a motion from someone to approve the minutes of the January 10th meeting? Patricia makes a motion. Do I have a second? Anyone? Matt, I'm going to take that as a second. A clapping second. All in favor? 1, 2. Aye. Matt, okay. All right, we're all set there.
So
okay.
I can't remember if I honestly, it was so long ago. I can't remember if
I know it's been a minute, right?
Everybody was there, so you're good.
Okay. Then yes.
Okay, perfect. Perfect. Sorry, I guess we should have led with that, huh? Thank you, guys. Okay. All right, so moving right along here, the disc golf RFP update. So as the last time we had spoken, we had put that RFP out, didn't really receive the submissions that we were looking for in terms of like the scope of the project and kind of the level of professionalism we were looking for the project. So we put that back out, received 4 submissions, which were scored. We ended up ultimately going with a tag team of companies being led by former world disc golf champion Avery Jenkins and Disc Golf Park, who is working with a local builder in Disc Golf Vermont, who is Chris Young. So they're going to be working side by side with our trails company Sinuosity, and they'll be on the property here very shortly to do the tentative layout. We'll get that map back in front of Act 250, as it would be a different project than what was originally proposed, just to go ahead and get that JO. 250 has the heads up that that's coming and has assured me they will turn it around on the quickness for us, so we can get that project moving forward. So that's the update on the disc golf RFP and kind of a brief update on Horace Hill. Does anybody have any questions on that piece? All right. At the last meeting, you guys had asked me to talk to the select board about the process that we were using for selection of those RFPs, and what, kind of what the scope of this committee was. After discussing it with the select board, it was decided, I think, that this committee is advisory in nature. What the board is looking from this committee is to be reviewing projects as they come in, to see that they align with what's been presented to us in the Weston and Sampson plan. And once the recommendation is made to the select board by us to move forward with these projects, that's, if the board agrees that we should move forward with those projects, that's when they turn it over to my office and we continue with the RFP process in terms of selection and writing the RFPs and things, as it's been with the rest of our projects, trails related and not. So that's kind of the answer on that. So, as a committee, I think we just continue moving forward with what we've been doing in terms of, that advisory role, reviewing those projects as they come in. And like I said, soon here we'll have some updated guidelines for, thresholds for spending and things like that. But that would probably be more of an internal thing for our office. So any questions on the RFP process as I just explained it? Patricia.
Actually, I didn't want to interrupt you, but I did come up with a question from the last one, and I was just wondering if there's an updated map anywhere that we can see, or do we need to wait for the new, the Avery Jenkins to come up with the map?
Yeah, so the map we had put together originally was very tentative, right? I think now that we have our two design companies, I know the Trails Company has spent an extensive amount of time on the property and has kind of laid out where the trails best fit on the property. And now that we have our disc golf company involved, which we didn't have before, they'll be working together to make sure that all of those things fit together in a way that makes sense, in a way that means we can be walking on the trails on the property and not getting hit with a disc. So I believe the tentative schedule right now is for us all to be on property on April 20th to discuss the project, at which point Chris from Disc Golf Vermont and Brooke from Sinuosity will be taking a deep dive walk into the property to kind of look at how things fit together. We'll get a tentative map together, and then again we'll be presenting that to 250 for an updated JO for the project. Okay.
Cool. Like, is like this committee invited, or is it just like the select board, or?
No, really, it's just our designers right now, the people we've contracted to do the project. And, obviously I'll share updates as we go along. But I think, the board hired those companies for a reason. And that's, because for their professional opinion about how it fits together and things like that. So I think, they'll be doing that. Obviously I'll be, open with you guys and sharing maps and updates and things as we go along through the project. Everybody will know what's going on and when it's happening. So, and the board will as well. There will be plenty of time for public comment there.
Cool, thank you.
Tommy? Oh,
there we go. Am I unmuted?
yeah, there you go.
All right, I'm on my phone, which is a little more cumbersome.
Yeah, no, I
okay,
got you.
so just so I'm clear, so we're an advisory role here, this committee, and we'll have suggestions and all kind of weigh in from our different opinions and areas of expertise.
Mhm.
And then the board makes a decision on whether or not to proceed. And if it does, then your office will proceed with an RFP, correct?
Mhm.
And submit that to the board.
Mhm.
So the only thing that, and just in my opinion, that might make sense that, maybe you could discuss with the board, and I don't know how the rest of the committee feels, if we're all putting the time in to have suggestions and put input, with some of these projects, it's months and months of having these conversations. Would it not make sense to review the RFP in this committee before it goes to the select board? Just to see if everything that we had kind of been discussing, and not that this RFP wasn't, Eric, because I do think it was from what I saw, but would that not make sense for this committee? Not that we would have an approval power or anything, but just to kind of review it and say, yeah, this is what we've been talking about for the past year. Looks great. Let's go submit this.
Yeah. I obviously don't have a problem sharing the RFPs that I put together. Like it's, I think I shared the RFPs that I did for the Horace Hill project with SOVTA before those were released. So, I'm happy to share if somebody from the group would like to see them. Absolutely. I think the discussion that we ended up having with the board is that, there's a reason they've put me in the role that I'm in, right? And that's that, like in terms of the decision-making process and how these things are processed is part of why, I was put into the role when I was hired. So, absolutely happy to share those things. Sarah, do you have a comment?
I just wanted to say that I think that, when we go back to the idea of this committee being an advisory in nature, and I apologize, I'm splitting my attention between two things. So if I misunderstood something, I apologize in advance. But so I think that the time for this committee's input is prior to the RFP being written, not after the RFP is completed. There may be some really large projects where it may make sense to start talking about that, but in general, the place for this committee's work is leading up to getting the RFP out the door.
Yeah, like I said, I don't have a problem with sharing those things. I mean, obviously they're public documents anyway, after I've sent them to the select board, right? And we discuss them at public meetings. I mean, it's all done in an open and transparent fashion. So it's not as if, I'm not keeping anything from anyone. So it's, my only concern would be, delaying RFPs any further, based on that additional review. But I think, yeah, I mean, if that's something you would like to see, I can run it by the board and just see what their thoughts on it, whether they think that that's the appropriate step, or whether they would just rather have me write them and present them to them. I'll let them make that decision. You know what I mean? For us. Does that make sense?
Yeah, and just again, not to change anything up, but just in my mind, it makes sense to almost put an agenda item in the future if we were all providing input, as I said, over time for an RFP. I know there was different pieces that were important to various members of this committee before it goes out the door, to just have a conversation like as an agenda item. And again, and if nobody agrees, then I don't even bring it to the board. I'm curious if it just seemed that way at the last meeting, that there were people who had a similar opinion. But again, if not, then not important.
Okay. Any other input on the topic? Patricia?
I would be curious to look at them also, but not if it, like slows up the process of, it's done on the beginning of the third week of the month and, makes you wait like 3 more weeks to put it in or something.
Yeah, and I don't think, I think like Sarah had mentioned, I think, that's, and like Tommy was saying, like, I don't think it's, if I present the RFP to the group, it's not going to be in an attempt for the group to change it, for any reason other than to say, oh, hey, we missed this other part that we talked about, or why isn't, like, at least an explanation as to why a part may or may not have made it into the RFP. I completely understand that. But in terms of like the basic framework of the RFPs, timelines, things like that, that's what the board's looking for me to craft and to be presenting to them. So I think that part may not be as up for discussion, but definitely, like Tommy said, if there's, hey, why isn't this piece of the loop trail, included in the RFP, then absolutely that's stuff that we can be discussing on those RFPs if that's something, we want to be doing. Okay. Tommy's that work? Perfect. All right. Any other questions on the RFP process? No. Okay. Just a quick follow-up, an update really on the Conservation Commission questions that were asked in this group. Forever ago, I presented those to the Conservation Commission, as well as the Select Board. The Select Board acknowledged that they were received at a public meeting. The Conservation Commission answered those questions at a public meeting of which I attended. They were then drafted by member Chris Cady of the Conservation Commission and presented back to the Dover Select Board, as well as myself, to disperse to you guys. So as far as those questions went, we have the answers now. I think, moving forward, any questions, around the Conservation Commission, let's take them to the Conservation Commission, because I feel like we added an extra step on this that, could have been avoided if the questions were taken directly to the Conservation Commission. Right. So, we have the answers that we were looking for. So, in the future, if we have more, we can ask them. Okay. Does that work for everybody? Perfect. All right. The Valley Trail A- update. So, unfortunately, Valley Trail A- is no longer. So we tried and we tried. This project has been going since 2 predecessors of mine ago, when Ken Black was here. And I think when the project was originally proposed, there was a lot more retail with Patricia down in those plazas. And I think, the original plan made a lot of sense. And I think as time went on and those properties evolved into different things, the project became harder and harder to justify. And, you know, extensive conversations with property owners trying to get easements signed. That was one of the largest hangups on this project as we went along. I mean, getting easements taken care of when they're not amicable all the way through is not always an easy thing to do. So that was the biggest holdup. So it delayed this project from the time we got the grant in 2014 until, you know, now when I asked for an updated quote on the project and what the expenses of this project would be to get completed, that number jumped. So we originally received a grant for $292,500. We were going to cover an additional $35,000 or roughly around there to make up to $325,000 to complete the project. Okay, that was in 2014 dollars. In 2023 I guess in 2026 dollars, it was estimated by the time that they put a shovel in the ground on this thing and all new engineering was done and easements were signed. So 2020, or I guess it was 2024. We were looking at a number closer to $866,000 to continue the trail by putting a crosswalk on the northern end of the bridge at the bottom of Dorfitch and Route 100 to go over the walking bridge and across the lawn there at Bogle Road, terminating at the corner of what is formerly known as Tollgate Plaza. So basically an additional 566 feet of trail was going to cost us $866,000. So we had the original grant. We had an opportunity to possibly receive more funding from the state to cover additional, you know, portions of the project to try to make up for it. But new grants from the state where our old grant was a 90-10 match, this grant's an 80-20, the new grants. So, you know, ultimately we'd be covering at least 30% of the project. And I think at the end of the day, you know, I presented a path forward to the select board, you know, with some comments, with lots of feedback from public and, you know, on both sides of the issue. And I think, you know, ultimately at the end of the day, the select board decided, you know, that additional 566 feet for what we were getting, for what we were going to have to pay and the work that was going to have to go into it, you know, no longer really made sense for the town. I think if there had been more, you know, activity, you know, at the end of the trail, and Patricia, I'm so sorry. I don't want you to think that I'm downplaying the importance of your store, because it's very important to us. But, you know, at the time that this plan was originally made, there was retail next to you. There was retail across the street from you. You know, there was an abundance of business in those plazas. And I think, you know, now it became more of a question of, okay, how do we get people safely around the bridge when they're running or walking? But then the question became, you know, are we going to be able to adequately mark this crosswalk on the north side of the bridge of a blind bridge, you know, where cars are really just starting to slow down as they come into town? You know, the state wouldn't even assure me that they could put, you know, like the flashing lights crosswalk, or what they would even put to notify that there was a crosswalk on the northern end of that blind bridge. And that, to me, you know, was a really scary thought. It's obviously it's scary to think of people trying to walk across the bridge now, but I don't want to solve a problem with a problem by putting a crosswalk on the north end of a blind bridge. I think, you know, anyone who's walked on the Valley Trail as it sits now and has tried to cross by the Berkeley Veller building, you know, at the bottom of Valley View, crosstown and Route 100 there, I mean, cars don't even stop for that crosswalk, and that's on a straightaway. So, you know, there was some definite concerns there. And I think the idea after that is once we get the people over the river, they're still walking in the road, you know, whether it's to get down to Twice Bless or your store, or, you know, they have to cross again to get back over to your store, or continue south through those blind S curves to get to either Snow Republic or, you know, those other locations. So I think ultimately the board made the decision that, you know, we'd like to, they would like us to spend our time and our money elsewhere right now. I don't think that the idea of a trail that way is dead forever. I think just this iteration of it is the time had come to kind of put it away. So unfortunately, Valley Trail A- won't be moving forward right now. But, you know, again, we'll keep an eye on it. If there's any options that pop up to make something happen down there, we will absolutely do it, or, you know, keep our eyes on it at least, and, you know, work with the state on getting some grants for some other projects here in town. Okay. Any questions on that? Patricia.
What about and I'm so like bummed that I ended up missing the select board meeting on this. I didn't know when it was, and the people from One Bogle Road, this guy, John, whose mom owns the property, he came over and asked me how I felt about it. And at first I was really indifferent because I didn't think like anybody's going to hop on the Valley Trail to like, maybe come to my place. But then I thought, geez, if people are walking by, they're going to stop in. And my ultimate goal would have been to like have it go all the way to the Republic place that has such parking issues. Okay, so that's a long roundabout way. The American Recovery Act and like funds from that, would that like be able to be contributed to anything related to like economic stuff in the town, even not necessarily this project, but obviously this project would be great too. And I'm glad to hear that it's not completely off the table, because crossing the road could be done a little further down the road. Not saying that to be self-serving. And the ski shop next to me is retail, but people, they kind of need to pull in there to not walk there to get skis.
Yeah, the issue with moving that crosswalk back again was those easements, right? And how much those property owners are willing to give up to have, a walking space on their property, which I think is why the original design had that crosswalk at the end of, like at the junction of Dorfitch Route 100 where the trail ends, having that crosswalk there, because I think the original discussion was that the property owners didn't want to have a crosswalk all the way across, or, a sidewalk all the way across their front lawn to bring that back further. And they have roads through there that they use to get their equipment up and down in their yard and their garage and things like that. So I think that was the issue there. And when I say it's not dead, I mean, again, I don't know, there are not any active plans obviously in the pipeline right at the moment, but we will obviously keep our eye on that. As far as the ARPA money goes, I applied for that money for the town. We received it. Two pieces of that. So we use the standard loss provision, so that means that we can use that money technically for anything that the town would spend money on, right? So any infrastructure projects or things like that are totally eligible under that ARPA program. We unfortunately did not receive quite as much ARPA, I think, as people assume we did, just because it's based on census number for full-time residents, and Dover is not exactly flush with full-time residents. So we really didn't receive nearly as much in ARPA funding as many of the other towns around us did, just because our number of full-time residents is quite a lot lower than I think what we're seeing in, Newfane, Wardsboro, Brattleboro, even Wilmington. And then, there will be public discussions coming up about what to do with that money. The holdup on that right now is just that, we're trying to figure out if we can get some Department of Environmental Conservation money to take care of a project at the town common for a well that services our library and daycare, and as well as the town hall on the common, because we have a PFAS issue that's been going on for years and is costing taxpayers, a decent chunk of money to try to remediate. So there's been discussion, at least tentatively, about maybe using some of those ARPA dollars to help take care of that, because we really need that regional daycare center. The library is a very important asset for the town, as well as that, the town hall and meeting center there, having, potable water. So really the holdup on those discussions is, getting that answer from the DEC about whether or not we can get funding from them to take care of that portion. And from there, we'll be holding public meetings to discuss, what we think we should be doing with the ARPA money. I know that most towns have kind of earmarked that ARPA money to, spearhead some economic development initiatives. And that's mainly because they don't have 1% and they don't have an economic development department the way that our town does and the type of budget we have. So I think that was the idea, is that maybe those ARPA dollars could be used to cover some of these town infrastructure things, as opposed to going right into the pot that we already have for economic development, if that makes sense.
Yep. Yeah.
Gotcha. So, I mean, we did explore options with DOT and said, hey, when we replace the bridge, is there any possibility of adding, a walking space alongside it, or can we go on the other side? So I think, like I said, we're going to keep our eyes open for opportunities and anything we can do. Obviously, I want to see people get across that bridge safely. Again, ultimately in my head, I see I would like to see that there's a plan for further south so that we're not dumping people into those S turns, which I think just creates an additional problem. But you know, that we will continue talking about that, you know, as the opportunity comes. All right.
Thank you.
Any other questions on A minus before we wrap it up? All right. Perfect. I appreciate you guys coming. We'll have another meeting on April 11th. If you have anything you'd like to see on the
You mean May
agenda,
9th? Because today's April 11th.
I must. Oh yeah, look at that.
This is why you don't send out the agendas.
This is why
normally.
Eric doesn't update agendas and send those out. This is why he has an amazing assistant director like Shannon who takes care of this stuff most of the time. So,
Sorry.
no, not at all. So May 9th, normal night. If you guys have agenda items, please get them to me the week before. We'll send out that reminder. I probably will have our organizations, and by that I mean Stump Jumper, SOVTA, Mount Snow, maybe have you guys give us updates just on how your winters kind of went if you're up for doing that. So if not, let me know beforehand and I'll make sure I'll touch base with you guys before that meeting to make sure that you're good with that on the agenda. Okay. All right. Awesome. Can I have a motion to adjourn? Tommy makes a motion. Patricia seconds. Thank you guys. We'll see you in May.
Night, everyone.